Hey folks, I'm Chuck Block. We're doing 52 weeks of Python in 10-minute sessions, and the topic for this week is going to be modules and packages. And what I'm showing you here is what you will be able to create all on your own if you follow through with these lessons, writing the code as we go and understanding. We'll end up with software that looks something like this and a user interface that can create things that look kind of cool like that. So let's talk about modules and packages. So what is a module? A module is just a file that has Python code in it. So technically, everything that we've done so far could be called a module. But the way that we use the term most often is a module is going to have a lot of Python functions in it that we call from elsewhere. So here we're looking at the lesson from the last time we were together. This is my create devices function. If I wanted to take this create devices function and move it elsewhere, then I could do that and we would create a module. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that and then I'm going to create a file that is going to contain it. That file will be a Python module. Now you see I've created this file called L03 create devices. However, I have some errors in here, in fact quite a few errors, and if I make a quick look I can see, I'm doing a choice of things and I haven't defined where I'm importing choice from. I also haven't done the import for string. So let me go back here and I'm going to copy choice and string, these two imports, and I will put them into my create devices module. So now we can see that PyCharm has compiled this and figured out that everything's okay syntactically, and so yeah, it's okay to go. So now that I have create devices defined and ready to be used, how do I actually use it? Well, in my L03 modules application, you can see I'm attempting to use it, but Python doesn't know about it, so it's throwing this error. The reason is I need to import that function. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to import it from this new module that I've created. Okay, so I've told Python where it will be getting this create devices functions from, that it's going to be coming from this module called L03 create devices, which you can see I created right here, and I'm going to be importing this function create devices. Now, from my little program, which suddenly is very, very simple, I can call into this other module where I have defined my function that does create devices. This allows me to reuse it from elsewhere should I choose to do so, and it also organizes the code nicely. So let's run it and see what happens. So here I am, I've run modules. I'm calling into create devices, which is in a module that is separate from my application, and I'm getting this information. And since I have these nice parameters, you can see I can do something like this and something like this, and I will get different results. You can see there's a lot fewer, and I have whatever I chose to do, 6 subnets and 2 devices. Now all of the rules are exactly the same, whether it's a module or a package or a function that I define locally. I have these keyword parameters that you see right here within create devices. You can see I have defined these default values. So if I was to pass nothing in, that would be my default value. It would be 1 and 1. In fact, we can show that right here. I'll just go ahead and delete all of this stuff, and we should end up with just 2 different devices. One device, 1 subnet, 1 device. So yeah, you can see it's the same thing. And the last thing I'll point out is return values, of course, work exactly the same, even though you're going into a module that's separate from your application. So pretty simple. So pretty simple, right? I've taken my function that I defined within my application, I moved it into its own Python file, which is called a module, and then I referenced it from my new application. My new application is very simple. I just call it, there's no excess stuff sitting around. I just have to make sure that I import it appropriately. Now, if that's a module, what is a package. A package is just a folder that holds a bunch of modules in it. So you can see here from my original 52 Weeks of Python, I have a folder called util, and inside that folder, I actually made it into a package by having just the existence of this file underscore underscore init underscore underscore makes it into a package. I know that's weird. That's just how Python defined it. Again, if you want more information, consult the longer version of this in the 52 Weeks of Python. But in this particular situation, I actually have a module in which I have create devices. Now, I not only have create devices, I have a bunch of other stuff in it. But if I wanted to reference this create devices, which actually does much the same thing, but it has some other functionality as well, I can do that by changing my import statement. So here was my original simple module import statement. I'm going to comment this out. It's going to cause PyCharm to get a little bit nervous and throw an error. So what I'm going to say instead is I'm going to import it from this package. And here's how we do it. So here you can see my import statement looks a little bit different from, and I'm giving the package name, and then with underneath that package, the file, the module that actually has the functionality for create devices is called create utils. And so you can see I'm using the dot notation here. That's how we do it, and I'm specifying this same file that we just looked at. I can call it, and now if I run my modules application, it's going to do basically the same thing. It's calling into this other create devices. Now, if I was to go back and change this to what it was before, so here I've provided, remember parameters, my keyword parameters, I've provided values that are a little bit different than we had before. If I was to run this, now you can see magically my output is correct because I've designed my create utils as well as the other one would work the same way, L03 create devices, because I've defined it in such a way that it takes these parameters, num devices, num subnets. It is working. And now again, just for your information, I have a default parameter here, random IP equals false. I don't pass that in, and so it's setting it equal to false. If I was to not do that, in fact, just for kicks, why don't we go to my modules and say, comma, random IP equals true, and PyCharm thinks that's okay. Let's see what happens. How about that? I've got random IP addresses. I've got my subnets still, 3 devices per subnet, but the IP addresses are kind of random. So that's just some functionality that I added before. So that is what a package is. I'm getting distracted. That's the main thing that we're talking about here. Package is just a folder that has init.py in it, and it has modules inside it, and this is how we reference it. Okay, let's quickly recap what we talked about. We talked about how a module is just when you take functionality that was in, say, the main line, and you move it into a separate Python file. Those Python files are called modules, and that is what we've done here. When we want to reference that, what we need to do is we need to have an import statement that references this. And so here is what I did originally when we went and we moved it, or we actually referenced a different module that's located in a different folder. That folder is called a package because it has init in it. It's basically the same thing, but I have to tell Python where to find it, and then I reference the same actual function, and that's how I call it. I mentioned that the way that we pass parameters, the way that return values are given, etc., are exactly the same, and the way that we define them are exactly the same as when we're just defining regular functions. The only difference is the code lives in a different file. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have questions, let me know. Remember, you need to write this code if you're going to learn it. So be sure to do that. And yeah, thanks for listening.